I'm going to be doing an Inktense demonstration of these goldfish. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind La Cree Fine Art. Today I am working just in Inktense pencils. Usually you guys see me do a combination of the blocks and pencils. I'm going to be doing a couple of videos just with one or the other. If you are unfamiliar with Inktense, make sure to check out my first review of these. I'll have a card pop up here so you can check that out. If you are supporters over on Patreon, I will have a 1-hour version of this tutorial available for you now, complete with voiceover and a few real-time clips, so make sure to head over and check that out. Now we will move on to this tutorial. For this piece, I am working on Fabriano Artistico Extra White Hot Press 140 pound watercolor paper, and I have used Winsor & Newton masking fluid to mask off my goldfish. For this entire piece, anytime you see me using a paintbrush, all I've done is taken the pencils and I scribbled a large section onto either a piece of watercolor paper or onto some sandpaper, and then used a paintbrush with water just to make my own basically ink mixture. And that is how I'm painting all of this on there, using a lot of water. The reason that I don't just use pencils to get my initial base layers down is that they tend to come out a little bit grittier, more grainy, which is not the look that I want for this. So that's why I'm painting on my base layers, just to cover the white. Now for the black area, I am going to have to add several layers to darken it up. And even then, when painting it on like this, I'm using so much water that the pigment isn't going to be super black. It's not going to get as dark as I need it to. So I will dry that, and then I can come on top with my actual black Inktense pencil. Now this is going to get much, much darker because I'm getting so much more pigment on the paper. I'm going to fill in the entire bottom section with the pencil like this, and I'm actually missing the clip where I went over it with a paintbrush. You can see it's super dark now. I just took a larger Filbert tackle and bristle paintbrush and added water right on top of the pencil, and you can see it's just so nice and dark. And I'm doing the same thing for the upper section, the dark portions of the water there. This next part was one of my favorite things. It added so much atmosphere to this piece. I wanted to create rays of light coming down. Normally that's something I do with the airbrush when I'm doing acrylic paintings. Obviously not going to work for this project. So what I've done is make a mixture of white, just like I did for everything else that I painted. I scribbled the white on another piece of paper, then took a lot of water, activated that to make my own ink mixture, and then splattered the paint from a paintbrush onto the paper. I will have to come back later on and add more of these splatters over the goldfish once they're painted in. One thing to remember when you are painting the white like this, where you're making the mixture from the pencil, it dries much, much more opaque than it looks when it's wet. When it's wet, it's fairly translucent, so you'll feel like you don't have enough white on there. Let it dry before you decide if you need more white, because it really does dry very opaque. So moving on to the goldfish. Now these guys have this sort of fuzzy, velvety look to them, so I don't mind if they're a little gritty or grainy, and I'm able to use the paintbrush, or I'm sorry, the Inktense pencil to sketch out where my initial colors are going to go. I've got to make sure anywhere that's going to be dark, I don't start with black. I'm starting by adding the greens and all of my lighter colors really first, blending that out with a paintbrush. You can see I'm drying it with a hair dryer. Now I'm coming on top with this nice brown color. It's a sort of sepia, really deep brown. I don't want to start with black because then I won't be able to go darker if I start with black. I want to make sure I go with a mid-tone so that I can still get my darks on top of that. Remember, when you're painting or drawing black animals or any black subject, it's not just black. You're not just going to start with black. You're going to have so many other colors mixed in there. Black picks up so many of the other colors around the subject. Now, for the majority of what I'm doing here, where I'm using the paintbrush to paint, I do think it is much, much easier. If you've got the Inktense blocks, go with those. I think it is definitely a lot more work to create the ink mixture with the pencils than it is with the blocks, but as you can see here, you can still do it. If you only have pencils, you can still get that look. I burned through these pencils really quickly compared to what I normally do when I use the blocks to create my backgrounds. So blending this one out, again, this is with the brown. I've not jumped into the black yet. I've got to make sure that any of these lines are going in the right direction for the fins and for the scales. I don't need every detail to be exact, but I do need to make sure, just like if I were painting or drawing animal fur, that all of these lines are going in the right direction. I'm creating the hint of scales. I've used a reddish brown color over the gold portions of the fish and then the black over the dark portions. Now I'm using a mixture of white, same thing where I've mixed water. I've scribbled onto a piece of sandpaper and then mixed water in with it. And I'm drawing in my highlights with a liner brush. And this will dry much more opaque than it looks when it goes down. This guy can start coming through with some of the black and adding more of the shadows. Don't want to go too crazy. I do not want to cover up all of that really pretty brown that I have in there. This is just for the deepest shadows. As you can see, even when I start coming through and adding the highlights with white, just leaving it these colors, the browns, the blacks, and then the gold and orange, it's still fairly flat looking. The fish don't feel like they stand out that much from the background. So what I decided to do was to mix a blue color. I've mixed one of my blues with some white, and I'm going to go through and outline a lot of areas on these fish. Even though in life they would not have this blue outline. The blue outline doesn't necessarily make sense, but I do think that it made for a better piece of art. And sometimes as an artist, you have to be able to decide, is it more important that this looks super realistic, or is it going to look better if I go ahead and take some artistic liberties and make these colors pop in one area or another? Even with that pop of orange there, it doesn't stand out enough. So here with the blue, look what a difference this is going to make. I'm also going to take some of this blue and outline some of the water between the black and the green up in the upper section of the water in order to tie these two areas together. I don't want to have this one color only on the fish. That's too much. But this balances it out by pulling some of that into the water as well. And now the fish just pop out so much more. They're so much more interesting to look at, I think, than when it was just the black, brown, and then the oranges and golds. Once all of that blue is in there, I'm coming back through with the pencils and just sharpening up some of my details. Pulling a bit of orange into the tail and onto some of the fins. Now I'm having to splatter some of that white paint to create the rays of light going in front of some of the goldfish. I'm just lining that up with the previous rays that were already done for the background. Again, coming through here, doing a few more details. I want to make sure that my edges are nice and clean. The last thing that I'm going to do on this one is to add bubbles, and I'm going to use my paintbrush with that white mixture that I was using earlier and draw little circles. On top of those circles, I'll come back through with a little bit of blue just to create a dark section on the upper portion, and then a little white sparkle, one little dot on the upper section of each of these bubbles. And that is it for this one. One of the things that I am just so in love with Inktense is that they're a very, very fast medium to work in. Even though they're not light fast, they photograph so well that I can have prints made very, very easily of these. I'm just very excited about that aspect of these. This whole project took me under 2 hours, whereas if I had done this in regular colored pencil, we're looking at several days worth of work for an 11 by 14 inch. So that is just a huge bonus with these. They are a lot of fun to work in. Thanks for watching. Again, if you're supporters over on Patreon, I have the longer version of this tutorial available for you now, so make sure to head over and check that out. If you're new to my channel, I have new art videos 4 times a week. There's a schedule here. Plus now I'm doing live streaming, so make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on any of my social media platforms, links below in the video description, where you will be notified of those live streams and keep up with news and my newest work. I feel like Vanna White. Numbers. Is Vanna White still a thing? I'm probably aging myself. Wow. I think every pen I've ever lost is on my easel right there. Should probably clean that out. When I record my videos every week, I will usually wear a dress, but I'm too lazy to take my sweats off or whatever my pajamas were in the morning. Today happens to be Halloween pajamas. There's black cats in witch hats. That's adorable, and it doesn't go with this dress at all. I am super classy.